I did a mushroom ceremony by myself, and the mushrooms showed me what my life would look like without Rachel. And I just cried for 3 hours, like uncontrollably. And I realized in that moment how I had taken her for granted.
You try to pretend like I'm macho, it's like, that's bullshit. That's not a personality, that's a persona.
Is it harder to be vulnerable? Or is it harder to be like, I'm good? Which one takes more courage?
We're desiring so deeply the full spectrum, but we've been put into these roles that are so finite, and we're infinite beings.
You could keep the secrets and play the games and be the fiat fuckboy, but it's not gonna get you the fulfillment that you think you want.
We are so conditioned from such a young age to not express our anger, to not express our emotions, to not move in our body, to not breathe deeply or fully.
I saw this angel in front of me, and then she's telling me she's literally walked through the fires of hell to get here.
The parts of yourself that you're actually indeed ashamed of, that you hide, that you don't love about yourself, are the hardest to share.
Thank you so much for coming out here.
Thank you.
As I was telling you offline, like we met June 23,
Yeah.
and one of the first, probably the first podcast we listened to together as a couple was their appearance on This Tantric Life,
Yes.
where you guys shared your story.
Yeah.
Very fascinating story. A relationship centered, or at least came to be centered on radical truth.
Yeah.
And that was very inspirational for us. You know, from the moment we met, I started sharing everything about me that I wouldn't typically share with a woman that I just met. And we've been striving to build our relationship on radical truth ever since. So for people that don't know your story, maybe we could just start wherever you guys want to start. Because I think it's just very inspirational for a lot of people.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. First of all, it's a joy to be here. And really a deep bow of respect to you guys for choosing that path. We believe this path of radical honesty. I would add into the radical honesty with kindness and with skill. You know, because otherwise it can be pretty hard to receive. Not brutal honesty. Because even a lot of folks think that if I'm just being honest. But we really have to think about, how does it land, right? How does the other person receive it? Because so often we create a story that, I did something wrong, you know? And so we go into storyline. If we don't know how to catch the stories, it's very rare that people are able to walk through the fire together and actually stay together, because it's just too intense. And that's where the co-devotional communication really comes in, which we can get into in a little bit. But to go back to your question, I would back it up way back and basically say that, you know, I grew up in a way that it was the perfect alignment for me to become a textbop avoidant. You know, if you guys know at all about
Attachment styles, right?
Attachment styles. For some, my brain went to quantum theory. 'Cause I was like, that's not the right word. And so, you know, it was very difficult for me to be comfortable with intimacy. And as you can imagine, you know, you probably, I don't know, as an Aquarian, I would imagine that you might have some of that, because we tend to be heady. Or men in general tend to be heady. And so we've had quite the rough ride, mostly because of that aspect. And I know that a lot of people out in the world really are struggling with this. We get messages all the time from people.
And it wasn't just you as well. Like it was dovetailing for me, which I think is a lot of women as well, the people pleaser. And so it was the perfect combination and dynamic for us to do, I think, some of the deepest work we could have ever done. And I think, to what you expressed, it's exactly that. It's challenging this original illusion around relationship that you bring the PR person and you're playing a particular role. And even though we met in a very authentic way, I think we both came in with that intention. We both had a very deep spiritual practice when we met. It was this uncovering of all the ways in which we weren't even being honest with ourselves.
It's unconscious programming.
Unconscious
for sure.
programming, and finding ourselves, because we didn't have the languaging when this was originally going down. We didn't know about attachment theory or any of this stuff that we so luckily have, ability to digest now. It was like, there's something, we keep on bumping up against this same thing, which I think most couples do, this desire to be intimate, but how do you get there? And this desire to feel really close, and then getting really close, and then, having to push away because it's too intimate. And not knowing how to talk about any of it.
Yeah. We were both, in different ways, but also conflict averse.
Yes.
Because we didn't know how to navigate conflict.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I think that's a big thing for a couple. You're going to get into conflict at some point.
Sure, yeah.
And if you don't have the skills and the tools to navigate elegantly, you're just going to not want to do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's through contraction, through rupture, actually, that you get to the next expansion, more intimacy and closeness. And so most people just either avoid it, dance around it, or when it happens, go into a pattern of conflict resolution that is extremely damaging.
Yeah.
And so you don't get to evolve in a way that we believe with a mindset of, conflict is here for me.
Yes.
This is a gift. This is a blessing. This is happening for us in such a way that we get to deepen our love, deepen our connection, deepen the safety and the trust, through which then the whole other universe of magic opens up.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. And like in those moments of it's so difficult, I think, in those moments of conflict to try and have that mind shift from it's happening to me, she did this, to it's happening for me. And I'm definitely in the avoidant category like you. I grew up very fast and independent. So I think I got very strong on that trajectory. Like, I don't need anyone, rah, rah, rah. But then deep down, you really want, we all want intimacy. We all want love. And then I don't know where you think you would fall in that. I think you might be a bit avoidant as well.
Yeah, we're both actually avoidant.
Yeah.
Because I grew up in a space where I didn't feel, where I couldn't be myself, in an environment where I couldn't be myself. So I used to play at home by myself on the highest floor in the house. We had like under the roof, like this, what do you call it in English?
An attic.
An attic, yeah. So, and I made it into my own space with very big teddy bears, and those were my family and those were my friends. And I was like all of the time living in complete isolation. So whenever I don't like my environment, I just go and isolate. So for us, sometimes that was not helpful because in moments of when you don't feel understood, you need to go and have a conversation to explain yourself. But what I do, I just pack myself up and hide.
Yeah.
I understand all about that.
Yeah. I think to a little bit more of our story, because I think it's good for the audience to know, because this is like, he gave us a little backstory of how you guys met. And I think when you meet someone and you're like, oof, yes, this is so good. And then there's a period of time where, because we're avoidants, because I would say, even though I'm mostly secure, I can also be avoidant as well. And I was definitely not wanting to have those difficult conversations. And so you end up not wanting to rock the boat. And you end up going farther and farther apart, in which that usually leads to is being like, the grass looks greener on the other side. For the audience who's listening, Johann and I met, we started really fast, really slow, but really intimate, in a sense that we waited typically longer than most to sleep together, but it was a very deep bond. We moved in together very quickly. We were very much attached at the hip. And then the conversations about being open and experimenting very quickly came into the space for both of us. And because we didn't have the tools of communication, there was, these things that weren't spoken, and we both did our best to navigate around them. So I think that which can seem like manipulation, for both of us, trying to get what you want without being able to say it. And I think that most couples deal with that. And at 4 years, when we were still, experimenting with open, Johann fell in love with someone. I fell in love with someone. We went on this crazy, wild journey, and then just revealed that the, years prior to that, we just weren't able to say the things, and I think that that's reoccurring. The number one thing that couples get into is, how do I say this?
Yeah.
Because I'm feeling it.
So one of my favorite quotes, this comes up like in every conversation recently, but Carl Jung's quote that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will continue to direct your life and you will call it fate.
Absolutely.
It sounds like another one of those, right?
Yes.
It's like you're dealing with this thing, but you can't put language around it because it's not quite conscious.
Yeah.
And so then you instead, were you acting out of fear in a way where it's like,
Yeah.
you want something, but you don't want to tell this person because you like them or love them perhaps, so you don't want to scare them away. So you're scared to lose them, but you also want this other person or path.
Yeah.
And so you end up just not saying anything, and then you get into a weird, deceitful thing.
Yeah. And also, I think even deeper is like, you don't know what you're saying. Like for me, I was not in touch with my darker feminine, my power as much, my sensuality. And so Johann knew that, and he didn't know how to fully articulate desiring to experience that in me. And I didn't. And so there was a lot of that conversation around like, he was like, you should dye your hair black. Dyed my hair black. Nothing happened.
Nothing changed.
Nothing changed. It was like, and I'm grateful for those moments because I felt it too. It's like this deeper unwinding of which a relationship is, right? When you're committing to a relationship or a marriage or whatever that agreement is, it's not just an agreement and it's done. It's a lifetime of unraveling all of these things. Like you said, why do I go up into my attic and choose to isolate? Because there's a reason I do that. What is the reason? But we didn't have the languaging of how to I'm not getting what I need. And you're not necessarily fulfilling me. And I want to get, so it's very, can be
So how did you guys get to that language, the languaging, and start getting more, a more conscious relationship with these dynamics?
So at 4 years in, we had a big old rupture. And the prequel to that rupture was at about 2 years in, I cheated on Rachel with a friend of ours. And it was, and again, like at that time we were like, kind of like sort of open, but it was all muddy. Like there wasn't any clear transparency. And then I wanted to tell Rachel, but the friend was like, oh my God, it'll be really like hurt her feelings. Like maybe it'd be better if, we didn't. And then I, for the next 2 years, like lived with a giant knot in my stomach. I woke up with it. I went to bed with it. I had sex with it. I took a shit with it. I meditated with it. Like it was always there, and that, again, talk about, even though it wasn't in the unconscious, in some way it was, and it was directing my life. And Rachel could feel it. She was like, there's something in this space.
Again, I didn't know how to speak to it.
Well,
I could feel
also,
it.
like, and she didn't ask me, like, hey, did you? So had she asked me, I would have said it. But then I was like, until she asks me, I'm not going to say. So it was this total mindfuck of a situation. So at 4 years in, we, at the time I was acting, and I was doing a movie, and I fell in love with my co-star, and it was this perfect thing where it was like trauma bonding. Like the thing that I felt with Rachel at the time was that she was this really, the story I made up about her was that she was this really good, sweet girl who's like, comes from a really wonderful family and who can't hold my fucked up darkness, all of my crazy, weird shit that's also me. And so I couldn't expose that part of myself to her because she just wouldn't be able to handle it. And then I met someone who had a really traumatic past, and I was like, oh, she can totally hold me. She knows what this is. And then, we fell in love and had this experience, and and then I'm also, communicating this to Rachel as it's happening. Again, not in full transparency, but like 90%. And we talk about this a lot in our course, Co-Devotion, which is like, you can be 97% expressed, but 3% not.
Unexpressed,
And over time, that 3% will become like heavier and denser and hold more energy than the 97% does. So it's so important to find a way to express that. So anyway, so 4 years in, I just come back from the movie. She just fallen in love with this dude, and and we were so confused. I was so confused, and I did a mushroom ceremony by myself, a solo mushroom ceremony at home. I asked Rachel for space, and the mushrooms showed me what my life would look like without Rachel, and I just cried for 3 hours, like uncontrollably. And I realized in that moment how I had taken her for granted, like all the good stuff, because in life, like unless we focus on what we're grateful for every day and have it as a practice, as a spiritual practice, we're like, oh, of course I have a beautiful home, and of course I'm healthy, and of course I have this and that. Of course my wife and partner is amazing. And we focus on the things that are not.
That's right.
And so that's what I was doing. Yeah. I was not seeing all the 97% that was amazing. I was just looking at that percentage of like, well, she's not exactly 100% right. And then through that experience, the mushrooms were also like, you got to tell her the truth. You can't live this way. And so she came home, and I sat her down, and I just told her basically everything. And then even in that moment, I was like, but maybe I shouldn't tell her about the cheating like 2 years ago. And the medicine was like, no, you got to fucking say it, bro. And so I did, and she held the space for me like a true queen. Like, and in that moment, I was like, oh, she can hold me. Wow. All of me, right? Yeah. She can. And it's just a story I made up about her that was blocking me. I wasn't giving her the opportunity to hold me. Yeah. I wasn't giving her the opportunity to step up and to really like hold me. Yeah. And then, for her, and I'll let her describe this part, but after that, I had broken her trust. Sure. And she was like, I don't know if I can trust you anymore. Yeah. So even though in that moment I was like, you're my person, she was like, I don't know if you're my person because you fucking lied to me. Sure. And it, it took about 1.5 years, maybe even 2 years for her to be able to learn to trust me again. But maybe you can take over and describe that part.
Well, and I think to your question, because it's such a great question as well, like we fumbled like a lot of like how do we do this? And we had like using from my perspective and my experience was like it's like my number one thing, because that changes the whole game when you realize that this is happening from my perspective. And that pulled our view from this like being in the muck to like what is occurring in your world? And then can I take a second to share what's occurring in my world? And through this period of time, this 1.5 years and many, many years afterwards, we were in just like the thick of it, having all of the conversations that you guys are having right from the very beginning, which is fucking incredible and so necessary. But being able to, like he said, for him to realize that he could open fully and completely and share all of this darkness that he didn't think was, I could hold or whatever. And to realize and get the nuggets from it and realize like we came to the 97% and the 3% through a deep, long 4-hour conversation, and then read Conscious Loving, I think, a couple years later by Gay and Kathleen Hendricks, which is like one of our Bibles, and they talk about the microscopic truth. So we were learning all of these things and then realizing, oh, this is a thing. Like we learned the story that I'm making up from Brene Brown when we listened to, because his journey was specifically about vulnerability. Yeah. It's like, I need to learn how to open up. Yeah. I was like, if you like, the reason why I'm looking over to this guy right here is because he's showing me his heart and I want yours. Like, so then we listened to her, and then my best friend Moon, who was my business partner at the time, was telling me about parts theory. And then I was like, oh, I'm realizing this is how I've been associating. I have all these different parts just because part of me is so angry at him. And I actually like, part of me hates him right now. There's this other part of me that loves him and loves him so deeply. And we were in that, I think, because this is our dharma and we know that we're meant to serve this and teach this. And so both of us are 3 5s in human design. It's part of our design to try everything, find what works, and then be like, yo, guys, this is really helpful. You should
From the
try
mountaintops. This shit
this shit works.
Use this
Use
stuff.
this stuff. So we went, so that time was such a, I look back on it so fondly because even though it was so messy and really devastating in all of the ways that it could be, because we had just gotten engaged 6 months prior.
Oh, wow.
And it was like the perfect, perfect like stabs, wounds for that, like, this is never going to happen to me. And then it happens. And so it brings up all of.
Yeah, I was going to say, for a lot of we work with couples a lot, and it's almost like a scientific fact.
Yes.
When you get engaged, when you get married, when you have kids, at one of those junctures, all your shit
all of
comes
them.
up.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like somehow the universe is, all right, you committed.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
now that you've committed, let me show you all the undone work, And so, and again, for our audience out there listening, the invitation is to go like, this is not happening to us, and it's not wrong. It's not a mistake.
Yeah.
It's happening for you.
That's right.
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Super.
Really, really uncomfortable, but it's happening for you so you can deepen and get out of your comfort zone, because you don't learn anything in the comfort zone.
For sure.
You're going to learn in the very uncomfortable zone. And
Absolutely.
again, to answer your question, is like, we got so curious about
How to
all the
do this.
tools that we didn't know, and then just started reading, listening, exploring, testing out. And then, we're nerds, so we got really, really into it. And then we were like, oh, this is amazing.
And
Like,
these are real things. Like we were
how do
doing
people,
mirroring.
and how do we not learn?
I
Like, how is this
know.
not taught in school?
Sure. So that's good. So it sounds like it somewhat brought you guys together to start nerding out about these topics.
Totally.
That's one of our deepest bonding things. Yeah.
Yeah.
So to ask you a question, because again, avoidant in general, and vulnerability, like it's a male programming thing, I guess. Like past girlfriends would probably complain that I was just ice cold, like inaccessible, all of that. But then, you get older, and for me, like yoga and meditation, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is not right. Like, especially when your guy friends are complaining, like, hey, dude, you're like a little abrasive and cold. I'm like, okay, maybe I'm overdoing it. And so I try to start to take that feedback and open up, and it's an ongoing practice still. But how did you, that's very important, I think, for a lot of men. Like, how did you access the vulnerability? There's a fear related to it, right? Like, you're going to give up your masculinity or something. But it's actually the opposite. It actually will deepen your masculinity, make you a better leader, make you a better man. So like, how did you do that?
So for me, for years, I was in the acting world, and I kind of like, I've kind of fell into it. And it was never like, I remember being in acting class years ago, and a teacher asked, it was like 35 of us, and said, who here feels like they were born an actor? And everybody raised their hands besides me. And I was like, shit. For me, it was just therapy. And I remember being in class, I think I was about 29 or so at the time. And I this acting method called Meisner, where you do this exercise where you just repeat a word or a sentence, and you can't explain what you're feeling, just the way that you're feeling colors that one word or that one sentence. And I saw this guy, and he was bigger than us. Like, this dude, he was probably like 250 pounds, like giant human, and doing this exercise. And he must have had one of the most difficult days of his life. And my strategy at the time was like, you'd be like, Johann, how are you? I'm like, even if I had the most difficult day of my life, I'd be like, I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. It's cool. You'd hurt my feelings. I'd be like, I get passive aggressive, but I'd never let you know that you actually got me, because I would. That's weakness. I would never show weakness. And this dude was on stage, and he was repeating a sentence, and he was just fucking like crying, just breaking down. His body was like shaking. And I swear to God, it was like a cartoon I literally had this thought bubble like come up, a light bulb went off, and I was like, oh my God. That is courage. That, instead of what I would be doing on stage right now, which is like, I'm good, I don't care, whatever, bro. That is courage. And then I had a girlfriend at the time. was not putting up my bullshit. I had a therapist who was a woman at the time, was not putting up my bullshit. My teacher was also a woman. So I had a trifecta of women who were just grinding down on my bullshit. And then the little crack got in. And then it took me years and years and years and years until this one came along to really, really trust the feminine. Because the story I had heard from my dad was you can't trust the feminine.
Yeah.
The story that I created with the relationship I had with my mother is you can't trust the feminine. Yeah. And so in relationship, vulnerability to a woman was like, oh, she's going to manipulate me in some way or take advantage of me in some way. And especially the men out there, just feel into this. Is it harder to be vulnerable, or is it harder to be like, I'm good?
Yeah. Exactly.
Which one takes more courage?
For sure.
And that's your answer right there.
Yeah.
It's like when you weigh the two, you understand which is the true path of the masculine.
Yes.
To be in all of your feelings and all of your truth and all of your sorrow, all the parts, and be able to express it, but not be a victim about it.
For sure.
Not being like boo-hoo me, but just
take
like,
responsibility.
Take responsibility. Yeah. And the moment that you do, it shifts and changes.
Yes. I think this is an aspect of radical truth, actually.
Yeah.
Because in truth, we are all vulnerable mortals.
Absolutely.
We have a heart, we love. Love is the motivator of all things.
Yeah.
If you deny that and you try to pretend like I'm macho, it's like, that's bullshit. That's not a personality, that's a persona.
And you're not a trustable man.
And you're not trustable.
Yeah. And everyone except you knows it.
Yes.
They're like, no, not this.
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because our body reads everything. This is 5%, this is 95%.
Right.
A body knows bullshit.
Yes.
If you're like, I'm good, and your body's like,
yes.
So you hug a dude and they're like a fucking rock wall, you're like, oh, buddy, you gotta learn what to do,
The farm at Okefenokee is a revolutionary new regenerative agricultural community. It features an 8,000 tree olive orchard, which they use to make their own olive oil, as well as a very large pecan orchard. All the animals on the farm are heritage animals, with some varieties over 100 years old and others thousands of years old. Fresh eggs are produced daily by the farm's chickens. Also, there are over 1,000 beehives that pollinate the over 200 heirloom fruits and vegetables and provide honey to all the residents. The farm makes its own molasses, unrefined sugar, herbs, and spices. The farm also features an herbal apothecary and a commercial kitchen. These are just a few reasons why the farm is the healthiest place on earth. To learn more about the healthiest place on earth, go to okefarm.com and use discount code BREEDLOVE for $21,000 off custom cabin pricing. Again, to learn more about the farm at Okefenokee, go to okefarm.com and be sure to tell them I sent you. iCoin Technology has released a slick new hardware wallet. It looks like a mini iPhone with a high-res 3-inch touchscreen and camera on it. The device has no Wi-Fi, no cellular connection, and no GPS. It is an air-gapped hardware wallet which uses QR codes and a camera to communicate with the Bitcoin network. It has a built-in camera which is required for air-gap operation, and it has an optional Bluetooth compatibility. It's really a brand new user interface and user experience for a Bitcoin hardware wallet. iCoin makes self-custody accessible, easy to use, and non-intimidating. It even comes with an optional custom iCoin thermal printer, so you can print out the private key and its associated QR code when you're setting up the wallet. This makes setup quick and simple. Also, it is easy to restore the wallet just by reading the seed phrase QR code with the wallet camera. And as we always talk about on this show, the only way you can truly own your Bitcoin is by having it in self-custody. So you need a device like the iCoin wallet to truly own your Bitcoin. So go to iCointechnology.com/breedlove today for 30% off the purchase of this sleek new hardware wallet. Again, that's iCointechnology.com/breedlove. You were sharing the story the other day about your experience with a horse, right?
Yeah. I'm going to be that horse girl right now. Like, you know, those people that are obsessed with horses and they ride horses. But that was, I think, when you're speaking about masculinity, I had like this masculine experience with a horse because I was riding for the second time with a horse, and big, giant muscles, strong. But he's also very intelligent at the same time. Anyway, long story short, I was riding for the second time. He recognized me. So I was like, okay, we're vibing, we're good. He's feeling my energy. And at some point, we were putting up the saddle, we were binding him up, and he couldn't reach his leg. And the flies were getting on his leg. So he was getting bothered, and he couldn't like move around. So I cleaned up his legs for him. And then afterwards, he moved his head, and he was like literally doing this and saying thank you. And that was like, wow, because you'd feel such a giant, being strong animal, being so thankful and warm. And I think that's the true masculinity. The moment that you see your husband, your man, the strong giant robot is double my size, literally, like in kilograms. But the moment that he is connecting on that emotional level and opening up, it's not only that he's being honest and truthful to himself, he's also allowing me to love that version of him. So what you're actually doing when you're not sharing your emotions, you're not allowing for the other person to love you.
You can't be in truth. You can't be in truth. Yeah. The other thing that's a great horse story as well. I was also thinking of the one where you said, you were going into the horse telling yourself, I'm not scared, I'm not scared, I'm not scared. But the horse saw straight through your shit.
That was the first time. True. I was feeling fear, and then I was lying to myself. I'm telling myself in my head, like, oh no, you're not scared. You're not scared. So I was acting in a way like I am not scared. I'm confident. But he was feeling my energy, and he was like pulling away from me. Like, no, you're not there yet. And that was like, oh wow, like the energy layers that we have, that we can be lying to ourselves about what we are, but the other person is going to feel it.
Yes. I remember I would never cry. Like it was just like I would just not do that. But maybe you'll appreciate this because you're from Tennessee. I love country music. And when I listen to country music, I cry.
There are some songs. For sure.
And then whenever, we'd be in the car and driving, and a song would come on, and I would just be like, and she'd be like, oh my God, baby.
Oh my God, I love this. And I'd be like, this is so nice.
And I would be so uncomfortable because she would be so attracted to me in that moment. I'd be like, no, I'm fine, or whatever, and well,
I think
such a journey of like breaking the
stereotype.
And just a story that's weakness versus it's beautiful.
And then how good it feels when you do embrace it. Like for me, there's several films that do it for me too, or just they just get you to like, I don't know, get to the point as, again, it's a work in progress. I'm not perfect at this, but when I can let that feeling take hold of me and really be with it, there's something so raw and real about it. Another thing was like, I was very influenced by Jordan Peterson's lectures. A lot of intellectual content, but it was the moments where he would reach that emotional breakdown, where he was like something he really cared about, and you felt his voice trembling and breaking, like, oh, that's when you get chills. That's when everyone's like enraptured by it. It's like, because the man is being true, like to his heart. And so there's just something so powerful about it. And I don't know how we fucked up the programming in the West, but it seems hard for us to get there.
Honestly, I think it's worldwide.
I think it's worldwide, and I think it's bringing us back to this awareness that we want the full spectrum. We're yearning for, desiring so deeply the full spectrum, but we've been put into these roles that are so like finite, and we're infinite beings. And it's like, we don't want a man who's only crying all the time.
Of course.
We want to feel the full vulnerability, and we want to feel the full, like protector. Same way that we want both of it. Same with the woman, like you want this soft, radiant, beautiful woman, and you also want to feel her fire and her passion, her power. You don't want to be the one who's going to push her over. You want her to challenge her. It's like, I think somewhere along the line, we got so stuck in these these roles and these patterns, and we took them too literally instead of, we have ways of being that are unique to us, but anything can be learned.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
That we can define the pattern and instead of letting the pattern define us, right? There's a conscious decision we can make. I want to ask like a selfish question, I guess, for our relationship. So we get along, and again, I told you guys earlier, but just for the audience, like we met when your guys' podcast was one of the first we listened to. The way you built your relationship on radical truth. Obviously, it took you guys a while to get there. You went through all these trials and tribulations. You were the guys screaming from the rooftop, "This works!" or the mountaintop. Hey. We were the ones listening. We're like, all right. And I'm like, I'm going for it, all in on the radical truth thing. And it's been remarkable for our relationship.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Honestly, like you probably definitely contributed to this working out. Because then I got in my old way where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm this and that. And, no, I don't have any weaknesses. And it just would have been fake bullshit. And you would have seen right through it. So how like... a problem we have in communication. Like we get along, we're very truthful, like 99% of the time it's all good. But there are times, from my perspective, that the feminine can become uncareful with her words sometimes. So like she's a very rational person, she's very smart. So like I'm always connected and like, but then sometimes it'll shift and all of a sudden the words aren't being as careful. And then I am still in that mode of like taking her words seriously. And then that starts to like create this kernel of conflict. And then I can eventually get into my own problems with like anger and like, and then it just, so like, I'm just throwing that out there. Like, how do you guys navigate things like that?
I think that it's such a great question. And it's everyone, men, women, whoever you are, there is a way or a moment in which we become unconscious. And what I believe is happening in that moment is there's some sort of hurt or some sort of challenge that we don't know how to work with. And so we want to deflect and we want to put it on and cause, it's like, it's an energetic dagger. And going back to energy, like we are energetic beings in every sense of the way. We can feel it. And so when a word is laced, because they always are, with something that isn't congruent with, then you're like, oh, whoa. And then you're in defense. And then that's what's happening. And so I think that for us, I would say one of the most powerful things that we have learned and continue to learn and continue to talk about and teach constantly is the art of delivery. Delivery is so important. It's like if we can as human beings learn delivery, and that means with our words, with our body language, with our tonality, and with our cadence, we can solve like 90% of the problems of the world. Because as soon as you feel something that comes through any of those four, we are immediately in defense, and then we're in either defense or offense, but we're not receiving, right? And so the answer to that is like having the willingness to take a pause. If I'm reactive right now, it's for a reason. Why am I reactive? What do I feel like I need to defend? What am I feeling out of control around, or I feel nervous around, or I feel like I'm not getting, or I feel like I'm experiencing, and how can I speak to that versus deflect against it?
So one of the most powerful ways we have learned to communicate is whenever I'm experiencing something that inside of me, especially when one of the biggest flags is like when I know that I'm 100% right. Just know that that's a red flag.
Totalitarian mindset.
It means that it's the opposite, right? And for a lot of us, like when and it's so instinctual, like I know I'm right about this, and so when we get away from shaming, blaming, guilting, projecting, and if we begin by taking responsibility, right? So if I would say to you, hey, I own and take 100% responsibility, that a part of me is creating the story right now that you blah, 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 blah. Now, it's very different than if I would just say you blah, 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 right? And pointed my finger at you. And so, and Rachel is really the master of this, and I'm still learning from her. And so you guys become a team, right? And so, for example, if one of us forgets, And if we do some blaming or pointing fingers, we're going to call for a timeout, sacred pause, and be like, all right, I feel like things are heating up.
Sacred pause.
Sacred
That sounds
pause.
like an important concept.
Which really means you're just going to...
You're breathing.
So what happens is we have these grooves that we get into, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you all know what I'm talking about when you're sliding downhill and you're in a groove and you're just woo, we're going, you know.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, the knives are out, blood is on the walls, and you're like, how did we get here?
Yes,
You know?
exactly.
And you're just like, stop it,
Yes.
So to avoid that, you gotta stop sliding into the groove and being like, I can't stop myself anymore. So moment before that pause helps us reset. Sometimes it could even be like, hey, let's take 10 minutes and come back to this. Maybe we'll breathe a little bit. Maybe we'll take a walk, whatever. Depends on the intensity of the moment. But if you just gotta stop the pattern, interrupt the pattern. And then you own what you are experiencing and the story you're making up, because all of reality is subjective.
Yes.
It happens in here.
Yeah.
What's happening in their being, in their head, is completely different. So if you feel that your partner has just said some things that are maybe, not said consciously or expressed consciously, help them and be like, hey, my love, you just said this and this. So what I heard you say is, a part of you is feeling this, and the story you're creating is this. Is that about right?
Right.
And then she can actually back up and be like, thank you.
Yes.
Yes, you're right. It is. I am creating the story, and a part of me is feeling this. So you're not just going off of what she's saying, but underneath it, there's intensity.
Yes.
And you're helping her navigate that intensity because you guys are on the same team.
Yeah. This seems like and this is where I want to do more work. It's like, it's a very important component of masculine frame, right?
Yeah.
So like when she does deviate in her words or whatever, I don't need to follow suit and escalate, right? Like I need to catch myself in that moment, like, oh, here we go.
Yes.
Now I need to be the rock and let the storm blow.
Yeah.
But it's that for me, and you use this metaphor of like the crocodile that grabs your leg and twists and pulls. It's like when the anger gets me, it gets me so fast into the unconscious pattern. So like, how do you the sacred pause, like how do you get that sacred pause in before you start sliding down the hill into the unconscious?
And it's also, it's like, if you can become aware of the subtle body, as soon as you feel that anger, that's when you know you're in automation.
Or like as soon as you get an inkling.
Yeah, exactly.
So instead of like waiting until you're like, okay, I'm fine. I'm not fine. You're like, okay, here, pause.
Yes.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
So, because you know that you go from 0 to 100 really fast. It's like at 0.5, you're like,
you got to catch it.
You got to catch it.
Yeah, it's like 0.005.
And the thing is that we live by every single day. We do our practice, and part of our practice is Pirma breath, where we scream, we shake, we allow the somatic body to release tension.
Yes.
And so even in that sacred pause, and again, this will radically change your the dynamic in which that you guys relate. You could say, hey, my love, let's do just a 5-minute practice right now where we literally just jump around and be like, let's bark like dogs. Let's meow like cats. Let's breathe deep. Let's stomp our feet. Let's grab a pillow. Let's beat a pillow.
It's like ecstatic.
And then get back to the conversation because you just dissipated the majority of the charge that is in the unconscious, like ready to.
Yes.
Because the brain, like the higher brain switches off in that moment, and you just go into your lizard brain. Fight, flight, freeze, faint, and you're like operating from there. And similarly, when she's triggered or she's on her moon or PM, like women have their hormonal cycle, and that's also another thing for us guys to like be aware, like where they are in their cycle.
Because
they need different things from us at those times.
Of course.
And depending on the woman, the cycle can be very intense.
Yes.
And so to understand that when she's hormonal, she's not able to use logic in the same way. She's just coming to you with a feeling.
Yes.
And if you try to meet that feeling with logic,
it's terrible.
gonna work.
Yeah, it does not work at all. Yeah.
and I made that mistake like
Yeah.
a billion times.
Oh, so I feel like I've been
Yeah.
doing it my whole life. I'm just now like, that's,
Yeah.
it takes a long time for these
Yeah.
lessons to penetrate.
Yeah.
I appreciate what you said there. And I think for me, like we had one recently, it's the moment where you say a thing and I'm like, what are you doing, babe? That's the moment I need to catch myself, actually.
Yeah.
It's like
It's
way
just-
before the anger. It's like hours before the
Yes.
anger. But that is probably the
Yes.
moment where I'm like, I need
Yeah.
the sacred pause.
Yes.
And also how do I say it? To disconnect your partner's behavior or words from self.
Yeah.
So sometimes when your partner is saying something or doing something, to not immediately capture like, oh, that you meant that very much about me.
Yes.
Or you didn't finish your food, so you don't like my food. That's like like so many times where
That's
I'm like,
rarely a problem.
yeah, that's really a problem in this household because I love the food that I cook.
And I'm clearly not underfed.
No, you're definitely not underfed. But like those were the kind of moments where, for instance, Robert is triggered by something, right? And his behavior changed suddenly. Men have that more in behavior. Women have that more in words, at least I think in our dynamic, right?
Yeah.
And in the beginning of our relationship, every behavioral changes was me.
Yeah.
What doesn't he like about me? Why is he talking like that? Why is he walking like that? Until I was able to disconnect that. I was like, oh, he's an Aquarius. Like for me, that was the trick. I was like, they have mood swings. So let's.
It's true.
I was like, okay, it's not me, it's Aquarius.
Yes.
So to me, that was the only way that I could disconnect. But like, yeah, yes, try to work on it. And so many times that we actually end up in an argument that has nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
It is something from our past, something from our external environment that triggers us and puts us on that path. And we just grab our partner with us. And that's literally, and then at the end of it, I was like, oh, what was going on? Oh, you just were reminded of those fears and you were in that chain of reaction.
And then that escalation feels impossible to stop.
Yeah.
That's why I'm like, I think the sacred pause way before, like when you even
yeah.
smell the
Yeah.
escalation
Yeah.
an hour from now,
Yeah.
you need to like.
We're
there needs to be an
most of the
interrupt.
time we're ignoring those subtle things into what Johann said. When you are in tune with your subtle body by having a practice that's bringing you in tune with your subtle body,
Yes.
you'll feel, as soon as you feel, what are you doing?
Yeah.
That's the number one indication to own.
Yes.
I'm making up this story. It
Right.
it immediately squashes it in the moment.
Yeah.
Right. And then it doesn't build over time where you're caught off guard, because we sense the most minute things, and the majority of the time we just ignore them,
Yeah.
or we think this is not important. That is the most important thing, because
Yeah.
that's what's teaching your instrument to be finely attuned to the
Yes.
moment, and then you can serve the moment. And just exactly as you said, then you're no longer taking things personally.
Yeah.
You're on the same team, helping investigate,
Yes.
right, together,
Yes.
side by side,
Right.
versus daggers across the room.
And another powerful
Yeah.
tool for you guys is when you're in it, right? And you're like, oh shit, we're in the groove. It's happening. It's like too late. Like we missed the moment.
Yeah.
It's back there. Stop
Yeah.
and be like, we're in it. Stop. Let's stop.
Sacred stop.
Yeah.
Sacred stop. Yeah. And this is usually I'm the one. It might be because you're more, it could be a masculine trait as well. I'll go macro. I'll go like, let's pull up.
Yeah.
Let's look at this situation from like 1,000 miles from above. How many times have we done this dance before?
100%. Yeah.
Right? How did we get here? And then what it does, again, it's a pattern interrupt, right?
Yes.
So you've stopped yourself. You in the middle of like let's stop. And then you view it from above and go like, wow, clearly we have moments. Most of the moments we love the hell out of each other. We get along. I love your cooking. We make love. We travel the world. Like do all this amazing. And then we get into these ruptures and into these contractions. And after that contraction or rupture comes this beautiful expansion.
Yes.
And then again, the contraction, the rupture happens.
Yeah.
And it's a pattern that is part of life. It's
Growth
just
pattern.
it's just part of it's a growth pattern. Now,
Yeah.
can we, in this moment, as we drop back into this moment, bring in 3 things I'm grateful for about you? I
back to
love
gratitude.
that you're here with me. I love that we're doing this together. I love that we're choosing to have these hard moments so we grow.
Yeah.
And the other person goes 3 things. You've just shifted the
frequency of the whole
frequency of the
conversation.
whole
Yeah.
thing. And even though part of you is still fired up, you're approaching it now with the awareness of the gratitude and the macro of like, oh, we got this.
That's so good.
And we're going to be okay in just a little amount of time.
That is so good. When you first started describing that, because I think it's an Aquarian thing. We like to zoom out, right?
Yeah.
We're big picture thinkers. I'd zoom out too, but I was encountering a frustration with it actually, because we had these recurrent arguments like about the same thing. And I'm telling her, I'm like, hey, listen, baby, the definition of insanity is repeating the same thing and expecting a different result. And like, after you see this for 3-4 months, like I start to question, like my rational masculine is like, are we in a bad thing? And so I'm trying to like articulate that with her, but that's all rational masculine shit. And like, maybe that's useful, but like, I like your point about coming back to gratitude, because you're ultimately trying to reshift the frequency back to that loving, cohesive pattern that where we're growing together.
And if you're looping, it's the number one indication that you're in a groove.
Yeah.
And so if you find yourself you're like, oh, I'm going to try and explain it the same way that I did the last 25 times. That doesn't work. And so whenever you feel a loop, I like to use all of these moments as like soul indicators. My soul is indicating to me that I am in a groove, or I'm in a pattern, or I'm in a learned conditioned behavior. And if I'm feeling this way that I don't like feeling, it's an invitation for me to do something I haven't done yet.
Amen. Yeah,
right. So like if I'm feeling that, I'm
yeah.
like, okay, what, and I we'll do that. Cause of course we all loop. It's so natural, right? I'm like, okay, what's a new way that I can invite this? And in just that alone is opening up my brain to be like, okay, this isn't landing. He's not able to receive me, or I'm not able to receive him.
And by the way, your brain in that moment is like, that's the last thing you want to do. Because you're having to create a new pathway, neural pathway. And your brain is like, no.
We know this. Let's do the same thing we've done.
Path of least resistance.
Yeah.
Forget multivitamins and other supplements. Animal organs are the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. You can get 100 times more nutrients from organs than you can from muscle meats. But the problem with eating organs is that they are difficult to find in stores, they are difficult to prepare, and even when they are prepared well, they often don't taste great. Thankfully, Heart and Soil Supplements has made consuming organ meats so much easier by providing powderized organs in capsule form. Organ meats include everything your body needs to thrive: vitamins, minerals, peptides, proteins, and growth factors. This is why organ meats were the most prized foods for our ancestors. Fortunately for us, Heart and Soil makes these treasured foods easily accessible. So go to heartandsoil.co today and use discount code BREEDLOVE to get started on your journey to optimal health and vitality. Again, that's heartandsoil.co, discount code BREEDLOVE. Have you ever wanted to start a business in the Bitcoin space? If so, then the Wolf Startup Accelerator could be for you. Wolf is the first startup accelerator dedicated exclusively to businesses developing in the Bitcoin Lightning Network. 4 times each year, Wolf brings teams from around the world to New York City to work with like-minded entrepreneurs, pushing the boundaries of what's possible with Bitcoin and Lightning. The program is designed to help early-stage companies achieve product-market fit, develop their brand, secure early-stage funding, and grow businesses that fuel the global adoption of Bitcoin. Go to wolfnyc.com to learn more or apply today. Again, that's Wolf, WOLFNYC.com. The words aren't enough, right? The words aren't enough because, as you said, there's 5% sort of narrative part of ourselves and 95% all these energetic layers that we're not always conscious of. But we also need explicit agreements, right? To have commitments between people. Like, it's very necessary. So, the masculine side of me is always like, careful with the words and precise with the words and what do we really mean, and don't say the thing you don't mean. And but I also have this appreciation for the feminine, that it's this beautiful, irrational, chaotic, creative. Sometimes the words might not mean what they mean. Force, right?
Indeed.
So how do we bridge that gap and get really strong commitments with one another that satisfy both sides of the equation?
It's a great question. I would say that when you have had a rupture, right? One of the best things you can do right after you're no longer, you're like, okay, we cleared up, but you're not, it just happened, like, but you feel like we're on the other side of it. What's really, really good to do is have a redo. Let's go back in time, knowing what we now know. Our brain, the blood is back in our brain, in our higher brain. Let's go back in time. What could have I done different? What could have how could I have expressed? And it's not, let me tell you what you could have done different.
Sure.
Let me first tell you what I could have, asked, like, what could have I done different? And then and your partner's like, oh, wow, yes, amazing. And then, okay. And then the question is what, maybe I can share with you what I needed in that moment. Had you not maybe set this word, because this particular word seems to be a huge trigger to a part of me. Now, let's even talk about that, why that might be. What does this word mean to you?
Right.
What does it mean to me?
Yes.
And then like you're basically now figuring out where are those little explosives placed, and how can, when next time the same thing happens, can we bring a little bit more awareness? Maybe I won't say that word or that series of words that are super hurtful to you, because I know that it's just not worth it. Because what I really want is connection and love and intimacy.
It's like hitting below the belt.
Yes.
Yeah. And so then you're, as a team, being scientists and figuring those out. And so if in the next rupture, the same pattern happens, you can call a sacred timeout. Be like, my love, remember how we talked about these particular words being really, really like the hidden explosives? You know, I want to just bring our awareness to this right now that we're in it again. Maybe, again, we could just back up like 15 seconds, 20 seconds, 60 seconds. And can you please say the same thing to me using different words so that I can receive it? Right. So that, because we both what we want, what we want, connection, we want love, we want safety, instead of hate each other that hurt each other. And so you're retraining these unconscious sort of ways that we hurt each other with a conscious way of creating connection.
It's really like, agreements are so important. And they must evolve as you evolve. And so oftentimes what we do in relationship is we make agreements at the very beginning and we never shift them. And it's, it's a very old traditional way of like, don't try to change me. You married me the way I am. I'm going to be, that's so old, right? And we are
changing all the time.
Yeah. We're
all changing all the time.
Yeah, we need it. And
thankfully changing.
Exactly. And so to make that agreement and to actually do a practice around agreements and to go through different sections of your relationship for yourself, for your relationship. What am I agreeing to? What are the commitments? Get really clear on them. Discuss them in an untriggered state. What does this mean to you? How does it impact you? How does it feel for you? So you're really, really clear, and then refresh them every little bit of time. And then to what Johann said, this is something that people overlook. Getting clear on words is because it means different things in different places to different times, people and cultures. And it's like, we've gotten.
And we're foreigners, right?
Exactly.
So for us, we might be saying something that has like no meaning, but to them, because they're Americans, they might be like, "Oh my God, how could you say this thing?" You know? And vice versa. Like it's all again subjective.
Exactly.
Did you guys have language barrier at all between you? Like, or you had the same native tongue?
We don't have the same native tongue. We didn't have a language barrier at all for us, but there were certainly words.
And meaning of
meaning
absolutely.
that we, and I would suggest that for most people, you think that think that the same word means the same thing to your partner or to your mom or your dad or whoever. And it might be slightly different or like so much different.
The context is always so gigantic and changing. Like it's very tricky. The idioms, because she's not a native English speaker. The idioms have been especially funny. When my friends are like, "Oh yeah, I'm turning over a new leaf," and she's like, "What leaf are you turning over?"
waiting to leave.
Yeah.
It's so, like every now and then she'll give me that look. You know, someone says an idiom, she'll give me the look. I'm like, oh, okay. It's fun actually. It's a lot. It brings a lot of laughter and joy to our
And you
relationship.
also really start to question, like, where did these come from?
Yeah.
Are these,
for sure.
How do I
work?
Yeah.
Like, huh?
Yeah. Who came up with that?
Yeah.
But at the same time that it brings laughter and joy, it can also be problematic. Like sometimes in our arguments, we're going, we're doing the post-mortem on the argument, and we're like, oh, when I said this, I meant this. And she's like, oh, well, I took it that. And I'm like, oh, well, we had a breakdown.
Well, one of the best things to do is, and comes from, we discovered this on our own, but Imago technique is a lot about this, which is mirroring back when you're in a conversation. And again, all of these tools are...
It's like active listening?
Active listening and active mirroring back what you believe that they said.
Okay.
Right? So this is going to slow you down. And part of us, when we're in that groove, which is good, it's going to, you're speeding, you're in the fast lane, you're like, and it's like forcing you to slow down. And part of us doesn't want to, but it will save us time in the long run. And when we do that and we say, okay, thank you so much for sharing. That was so, I really hear that was impactful. Let me reflect back to you what I heard, this, et cetera, et cetera. Is that true? And then in that moment, you're not, because so much comes from misunderstanding. And so taking that time to do that and just saying, thank you for sharing that. I know that took a lot of courage. I can see that you're, part of you is upset, and I'm here, and I'm so appreciative of you taking the time. Like it's all of these tools are designed to slow down time and calm our nervous systems and get on the same page. And like, I'm here. Like, I want to do this with you. Is this what you meant? And then the person's like, oh, wow. No, actually, that's not what I meant at all. I meant this, this, and this. And then you start to, through that process alone, realize how you process differently. And like we're processing more so as the feminine, like through our body and through our feelings. You guys are processing more through your mind, through logic, right? So it's a different technique entirely.
I think also there are like so many cultural differences. Like, just to give you a very simple example, in the Netherlands, if you give somebody, that's where I grew up, if you give somebody a gift, they have to open it in front of you and give them their impression immediately, because you want to have a genuine response. In a lot of cultures outside of that, which is like the Middle East, where I also come from, my parents come from, you give a gift and they put it aside, they thank you for it, and they open it after you leave. Because in case, and you don't want them to open it in front of you, because you don't want to be confronted if they don't like it. Like, please don't tell me about it, just gift it to somebody else. And it's okay, I just tried my best. So that is like the polar opposite of each other. And having that, like, oh, somebody did this, or they didn't open the gift in front of me, and like, oh, maybe their culture is just different. Like having that openness of like, because we recently moved to this house, and one of our friends brought us a gift, and I was confused. I was like, do I open it?
I think in the US it's almost whatever.
And it's but like this is such a simple thing, but it's huge. It's huge, totally. And it is something about appreciation, about whether you like. And I didn't open it. I just put it on the middle of the table, and we spent the whole night. And then she actually asked me like, open it, and I was like, yeah, of course, I'll open it right away. And she got my response. So in that sense, is like we sometimes even make jokes of like what is okay in a certain culture. It's not only a language that we have a difference, it's also a lot of different upbringings. How do you show love? How do you show respect? How do you show appreciation? What's not allowed? Like, what can you not ask? And like all these things sometimes are getting in the way.
It's the cultural programming, which is also a deeply unconscious part of ourselves until we start to pay attention to these differences. And it's so funny to me how like the whole thing revolves around radical truth. Like I keep seeing this as different aspects of radical truth, right? Like as you're trying to understand what she meant or what he meant, it's like you're trying to get underneath the words continually. And not having practiced these specific techniques that you guys are really just telling us about for the first time, but we've almost stumbled upon them on our own in a way, like not exactly, but different versions of it. And so like when we're talking about words, like, oh, this word or this phrase or this topic makes me feel a certain way. I don't actually like that phrase. We're going to say makes me feel. It's like, well, you're choosing to feel, actually. I choose to feel this way when I hear you invoke that word or that topic. we were trying to get beneath that. And for me, from my perspective, like we arrived at a topic that like gives me great shame when it comes up. And so we've talked about that. We've talked about that in our good, peaceful times. And like, we agree, like you're right. And then you've shared things with me that are like off limits. And that's been very helpful.
Yeah.
However, sometimes we get on that slide into when the weapons come out, there's blood on the walls, as you said, and we start using those very points against one another. And it feels fucking terrible. I don't want to do it ever. Like I want to commit to never doing that my entire life, but somehow I still end up there.
Yeah.
And I'll let you speak to your side of it, but like the question is going to be like, how? Like, how do we not do that?
I think that this is such an amazing question. And to what you just said, right? This makes me feel versus this is how I'm choosing to feel. So any of these interactions are giving you a thread or a bridge back to a particular scenario where this birthed.
Yeah.
Right. And so, for Johann and I, the commitment to our own practice and our own work has been crucial to understanding how we're relating to each other. Right. So if we are, we're just talking about this with one of our couples the other day. It's like, if there's something that activates or triggers, it's not just the instance, it's every single time before that. And specifically the first moment that you felt that you didn't express that, or you felt the original shame, or you felt whatever it is. And so then the fact that we practice every single day and we have something that is a sacred space for us to work out our rage and our anger and our shame and our pain, is it empties
in a non-logical, critical thinking
It's a
mind
somatic
way,
thing.
but somatic way.
Yeah, and
It's
you're
a
in
sacred space.
a sacred, somatic, safe space where you are free to explore, and you're not using words. You're just using your body. And so in these moments, you give this part of you that's a place to be free. And then when that thing gets poked, if you work that space enough, and in our practice, we always really, really always ask that you balance this expressive somatic work with a space of stillness and reflection, right? So you're when you're in that somatic place, you're like, oh, wow, I came up against a memory that I didn't even know was there, or with my dad, or with my brother, or with whatever it is. And then you see that enough, and you come into that reflection in stillness, and you see your own pattern. And then you can allow yourself to actually heal that. So when that word comes up and triggers that, it's not as agitated. You're like, oh, you can, the space that you took to navigate it in your own practice is now double downing in this scenario, and you're not reacting right away. You're like, oh, I'm watching a reaction, this thing inside of me. And then you can say, this word that I just felt a part of me get really triggered by is connected to that one time that my father said this, and this to me, and it made me feel this, and I created this story and then this whole thing unwinds. And even if when that unwinding happens, it's very likely that you're not going to use that as a weapon, because it's no longer, I'm the victim of my circumstance. I learned why I held on to this, and I'm no longer holding anymore, because I'm no longer allowing that instance to define who I am.
Wow.
And then the person, if they throw that back at you and you no longer get triggered, then you set them up for the deepest work they can do, because they will see in that moment, oh, I've weaponized this. Yeah.
And another thing I would say is,
That is so good.
because that takes a little bit of time to get to,
Yeah.
is to make an agreement and hold this agreement sacred.
Yes.
That you do not weaponize the most vulnerable things that you share with each other. It's like, if I give you access to all of me, the requirement is that we don't weaponize those parts that feel the most sensitive, the most hurtful, the most shameful, the most scary. Because we want to lock up again. And if both of you guys are avoidance, especially, it's like, the avoidant tendency is, well, fuck, I'm not going to fucking share anything then, because you're going to use it against me.
Right.
And so why would I? I don't trust you.
Yeah.
And so in that moment, when it happens again, pause and be like, wow, my love, I can see that we're on the, you know, in the groove again. And we're sliding down the groove and spiraling down. And we know where this goes. And is this creating more trust, more love, more connection? Or are we just unconsciously right now stabbing at each other with like the places where it hurts the most?
Yeah.
So we have to train the lizard brain that is in survival to get out of that place. On its own, that's just, it just either attacks or plays dead, right?
Yeah.
So it's so important that we allow our nervous system to feel safe.
Yeah.
So again, in that moment, pause, do a little practice, bring in that gratitude, go macro, you know, look at the thing and then go like, okay, let's do a little restart here.
Yeah.
I want to take responsibility that a part of me got really, really scared and triggered. And that, you know, again, I want to deeply apologize that I actually, and I'm feeling part of me is really ashamed that I used the things that I said I wouldn't against you in this moment. And really it's against myself and against our relationship. I apologize. The moment that we hear an apology and we're able to also like, I'm touching my body, right? I'm like, I'm touching my heart. And it breaks that pattern, that moment. Yeah. And when we hear that we take responsibility and apologize, the rhythm, the dance changes. And again, this takes practice. But the most important, guys, and you know, we can't hit this nail over the head enough, is Rachel and I do a practice every single day that is a full body experience.
Can you just like speak to that a little? Because it's so important, so foundational. Just a little description of what it is.
1,000%. So it's called Pirma breath. You can do this practice in 5 minutes, which is the beauty of it. You don't need to, you know, I call it breath play or breath pray versus breath work.
Okay.
So it's not, that's a lot of breath work is like, oh man, I'm going to battle here. An hour, like, oh, my throat hurts.
Recover for days.
And like, you don't want to do it every day, but what if your practice only took 5 minutes and you could get to that space, that DMT space of like remembering that you are not your thoughts, your feelings, your body, your, especially your identity. And remember that you are divine love, which we all are. When that, even for like a millisecond, you feel that, everything shifts. Wow. And so for us, we do a practice every day. Sometimes it's, you know, rarely it's 5 minutes. Usually it's like 20 minutes or 15 minutes or 25 minutes or 40 minutes. We have the luxury and we really luxuriate in this time. It's sacred for us. It begins by usually slow breathing and undulating of the spine. And then it moves into faster breath and into creating deliberate contraction in the body. And at the same time, when it's guided, usually I have several channels where I teach this. When it's guided, like I guide you guys through a storyline, essentially, of taking you into your fears, into your stories, into where do you hold the stress in your body, and then going into it, making even more stress, and then choosing to release that stress consciously and offer it to the fire of transformation, which is a big part of the practice. And then fill that space that you just created with divine love. Wow. And it's incredible, you know, I now know, even though we can't necessarily see this whole thing with our like eyes, but we can see it with our third eye, with our imagination. And it's wild how it works. Wow. And it works, you know, thousands and thousands of people all over the world. And everyone's like, this shit works.
We've had so many of our friends and clients and students who've gotten themselves like hooked up and measured, and like what it shows up in the brain is incredible. What it does. But it's a somatic release of like being able to move. We are so conditioned from such a young age to not express our anger, to not express our emotions, to not move in our body, to not breathe deeply or fully. And so this is like a full remembrance of learning how to be with our instrument, right? And if for all of us, I believe that probably the majority of us all have something around anger, because, you know, anger back in the day, you know, was always expressed not always, most of the time expressed really irresponsibly. So we're like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be that. And then we have no place to express it.
Yeah.
And you bottle it up, and then it causes a ruckus. And so doing this, I mean, when we went through our ruptures, like, I don't know where I would be or who I would be without this practice of, and if the rare occasion that we miss a day because we're, flying for 15 hours or whatever, and we come back the next day, I'm like, oh my God, it feels so good because you're no longer a victim to your emotions. You are in control, and you are becoming the creator and architect of your own experience. So even if an emotion arises, you are removed enough from it that you can be like, oh, wow. I'll say to him, I'm like, ooh, she's feeling spicy right now. So I can witness it without just being completely swept away into it.
Would you rather have 1 Bitcoin today or 2 Bitcoin a few years from now? Bitcoin mining is a tried and true strategy for accumulating Bitcoin. Over a 2 to 4 year time frame, successful miners have consistently accumulated more Bitcoin than they otherwise would with a traditional dollar cost average strategy. Blockware's mining as a service enables you to start mining Bitcoin from your laptop. Blockware handles everything from securing the miners to sourcing low-cost power to configuring the mining pool. They do it all. Plus, with Blockware's one-of-a-kind mining marketplace, you can buy and sell live Bitcoin miners with just a few strokes of the keyboard. In this marketplace, buyers get to purchase live machines at vetted facilities, enabling them to mine with zero lead time. And sellers get the opportunity to liquidate their machines and hosting contracts at will. This means you can mine Bitcoin with zero long-term commitment and high liquidity on your mining rigs. Blockware will even cover your miner's energy bill for the first week of each of your mining rigs when you sign up at mining.blockwaresolutions.com/breedlove. Again, that's 1 free week of Bitcoin mining at mining.blockwaresolutions.com/breedlove. Bitcoin custody is evolving. Both self-custody and single third-party custody come with significant risk and trade-offs. OnRamp is pioneering a new standard, multi-institution custody, which eliminates single points of failure, adding fault tolerance and redundancy to your setup. OnRamp secures your Bitcoin in a segregated cold storage multi-key vault guarded by 3 independent institutional-grade custodians, none of which have unilateral control over your keys. Your funds are fully auditable on-chain, cannot be rehypothecated, and can only move or be withdrawn at your explicit direction. Multi-institution custody removes the technical, mental, and physical burdens of private key management, providing unparalleled peace of mind for you and your loved ones. Bitcoin is money, and as the price continues to appreciate, OnRamp helps you seamlessly tap into financial services like trading, inheritance, insurance, loans, IRAs, and more, all without compromising on security or accessibility. Schedule a consultation with the OnRamp team to learn more at onrampbitcoin.com/breedlove. Again, that's onrampbitcoin.com/breedlove. This is so amazing. And it like kind of comes full circle too, the way you were describing to take that step back from your own pattern and see this one part of yourself that's getting triggered by something someone said.
Yeah.
It's a meditative practice, right?
Yes.
You're separating the observer from the pattern that you are. And then the way you tied that into, that is the daily practice, right? You're returning to source, just like when you meditate, right? It's you come back to the breath. The thought cloud comes along. You're like, oh, I'm thinking again. Let me come back to the breath. But you're doing that somatically daily, coming back to source. And you're releasing all of the traumatic physical experience of life and filling it with
and
divine
then
love.
The last part of the practice is called creation meditation. So in this, we use this, this idea of the sacred fire transformation, where we basically die a death into this fire as an identity. All of our fears of, past traumas, future worries, it all goes into the fire. And then we rise from the fire like phoenixes. And then in creation meditation, which is slower breath, ujjayi breath, we then invite the divine to create through us and with us. What is it that we want to bring into being now? Because all there is the now, forever. Like There is no future. There is no
That's
past.
right.
It's just this moment, right? So what do we want to create ourselves as? And when you do it over and over again, you realize that whatever you create is who you become, and it's all an inside job.
Yeah.
Because we've been taught, especially in the Western world, where everything is monetized, that your happiness is out there when you get the house, when you get the car, when you get the plane, when you get the whatever, right? Status, it's all out there, and then you get it, and you're like,
there.
I don't feel any different. I must need a bigger house.
It gets worse. Actually.
More status, exactly.
Because you're like, I got it and it didn't work.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What do I do now? Yeah.
Exactly. And so when you realize it's all an inside job, which is what this practice does, you become free.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you have a house or not.
Yeah.
You realize that it's all in here.
Yeah.
And it's such a freeing, empowering experience.
Yes.
And then what's so wonderful is we teach, do teacher training. So we, all over the world, we teach people how to do this now, and also teach other people, is when our teachers especially realize when they open up the divine channel,
Oh my God.
and they're like, am I doing it right? They ask us, I'm like, are you channeling the divine? If you are doing it right?
Yeah.
And for everyone, it sounds a little bit different.
Yes.
It's and when people tap into it, and then the transmission happens.
Yes.
Oh my God, it's
Everyone gets
unbelievable.
goosebumps. You're like, oh, your Kundalini starts flowing. You're like, oh my gosh. And then they're like, oh my God, it's happening, And so we all have that. We're all that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then remembering that daily is the most important thing.
This is that aspect again. It comes back to radical truth.
Yes.
Because as you said, the truth is we all are divine love.
Yes.
But then in the frictions of life, we start to think, oh, I'm this, I'm that,
Yeah.
she's this, she's that. And you need. I mean, I'm surprised. It's the first time I've ever heard of this. Actually, that we don't do this more often. Meditation's been something I've used for a tool, sort of like that. But this is more like a relational meditation.
Meditation is it's almost like certain martial arts. So you got to be a black belt in order to be really good at it.
Yeah.
There's other martial arts like Krav Maga, which after 6 months you're able to kill somebody.
Right.
So it's like Pirma breath is, how do I get to that place fast?
Got it.
It's going to make your meditation 100 times better.
Yes.
Got
And
it.
so it's just an amazing tool to get deep fast.
Yes.
And once you're deep, have fun, whatever you want to do. You can do your Vipassana, you can do your mantra, you can do whatever you want to do.
Got it.
But your mind is no longer chattering.
And if you think about like in the, it's, you would do asana before you drop into meditation, right? This is just a more free tantric version of that. And especially, as you said, for couples, when you come to vulnerability, right? We're a little, I don't want to, and this practice just opens up the floodgates for you to be all of the things safely in this sacred space. You're doing it, Johann and I would face each other, or you can do it side by side, and you getting to get to all of these weird, funky, silly, crazy, places. And that brings all of these walls down. Like I really believe that this is one of the keys to our relationship, because we've heard each other in the most ridiculous experiences. And sometimes we'll laugh because we're just making the most absurd noises. And that just relaxes a very deep part of us that is the vulnerability and intimacy that we're really looking for.
Radical honesty.
Yeah.
Radical honesty.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
Literally,
Yeah.
you can see, experience all of my weirdness, all of that. We're in it like,
It's so liberating.
and
It's
you're
so
like,
liberating.
you still love me, and I get to be this weird, and it's amazing.
We heard recently someone say that families that vomit together stay together.
Yeah.
It's like that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking about that and about radical truth, when you say the word radical truth, you're like, oh yeah, sure, right. I'm gonna tell you that I stole candy that day, and that day I did this, but that was the least of my worry to know about my partner, or even to share. Right? I'm happy to share online which day I stole candy from the Yemen, which was a store next to our house.
Yeah.
But what I really didn't want to be radically truthful about is the sides of myself that I don't like about myself. That is also the side that comes in these arguments.
Exactly.
Because that's the side of you that doesn't feel loved, because you don't love that side of you, and you've never accepted that side of you. So that is like that, what I call like the scar face with a mask, and is just fighting the world because he feels or she feels not loved. And I was like going to that part of myself is like describing it like in my journal, like that part of myself sees itself as completely scar tissue and wearing a fake camouflage mask to try to hide it. And is scared of everyone because it's scared that it's going to be hated and believes that it is hated and not loved at all. So it's like until we shared those or started to share, actually, that was at the very end, because we start off like all the things that we don't like about ourselves, like, yeah, whatever. These are like, you know, sometimes I fart, you know, that's all.
Oh, no. I love that about myself.
You know, so all these things, but the parts of yourself that you're actually indeed ashamed of, that you hide, that you don't love about yourself, are the hardest to share.
Hardest to even make conscious. I think like I'm still trying to make these things conscious about myself. That, you know, a lot of them, you know, one of the things they said at our retreat in Mexico is that triggers are trailheads. So like one of these things does trigger you, it's some unresolved. It's a trailhead to an unresolved childhood trauma typically. And I think it's unresolved typically because it's unconscious. Like you can't even see it. I
would like to share one with you that I just came to a realization after I was journaling and after our retreat that we just did. And it was, I like to believe I'm the kind of person that likes to work out, does a lot of things, is very active and wants to win. I'm very competitive as well.
You're a Leo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rawr.
And that part of me sees itself as strong, ambitious, as a survivor, as all of these things. Unfortunately, or not unfortunately, thankfully, in my life, I faced some adversity that brought really deep sadness in the moment. And that sadness also brought me panic. And my Leo side never wanted to admit that I was ever that sad or ever that panic.
Vulnerability.
So I was like, oh no, I will meditate through it, kind of through the pain, because that's literally what I was doing also at a very young age. I did not want to admit that I was feeling pain in that situation. So I believe that if somebody would ever see that I felt so much sadness or see my sadness, they would not love me or respect me because they will think that I'm weak for feeling this sad. And in our retreat, like a lot of that sadness came out in tears. And I was all tears. There was snot coming out of my nose, and all my voice was getting so, so, I don't know how to describe my voice, but you could hear the pain. And it was in front of him, and I was like, do you still love me? Like,
and the truth is, like, and I told you this when we met, right? You didn't share all of it with me, but you shared very substantial parts of it with me. That's when I fell in love with you, actually. Like when I saw this angel in front of me, and then she's telling me she's literally walked through the fires of hell to get here. And that's when you're like, I already thought you were amazing, but it's like, you're this and you came from that. It's like, you know, like, so it's just, it's the opposite, you know, it's like your fear is lying to you almost.
So that's the whole thing. But if because a lot of people who are probably listening to it went through some adversity in their lives or went through some trauma. And I was telling Robert the trauma, let's say, in a very logical way, in a sequence of events, not in the emotions that I felt.
That's right.
So that part was like, I can I give you a recap, right? Like it happened, the timeline and all these things. But I never showed my emotions how I felt. So I felt still lonely in my emotions, that these are things that I shouldn't have been felt like at that moment. And I'm like strong, I survived it, but in that basically I never cared about that person.
I had to infer the emotionality, which I knew. I mean, I'm just imagining being in the situations. You
dissociated, which is what we do when we are in a traumatic situation, when we don't have the ability to actually feel the weight of it,
Yeah.
you know, fully.
It's too much to
And
process.
it's too
at
much
once.
to process,
Yeah.
so we disassociate. It's a very natural tendency, and also what then makes us avoidance.
Yes.
right,
Yes.
is that.
Yes.
And I deeply feel you
Yeah.
on that. I've also been in the same pattern.
I asked the selfish question to him about kind of our psychology and whatnot. I want to open it up to you two though, because like you know, this is a two-way street, and you know, I'd let you take it whatever way you want, but like I'd be curious about like things that were particularly hard about dealing with men, or things that maybe were particularly hard to talk about. You know, something that someone would get value out of, that you know, making something unconscious conscious. But take it any direction you like.
You have anything?
I'm thinking like of priorities.
I know I'm a
right
handful.
now.
I'm sure he is too.
I think what you said earlier was very poignant, which is learning how to not take things personally was one of the biggest lessons of my life, and still continues to be so. I feel much more comfortable in it. But in the beginning, especially with Johann, like I took everything personally and I made everything about me and what I wasn't doing enough of, or I wasn't good enough, or all of this. And it was debilitating because it would swing in accordance with the avoidant, where we would have this like beautiful, intimate, powerful connection. And then all of a sudden he was gone and he wouldn't tell me why. And oh my God, you used to do this thing where I'd be like, what's up? You know, like what's going on? And he would just say, nothing.
Oh yeah, shutting down. Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
And he would almost look at me like something, but nothing. And that used to like, it was like,
And as an avoidant, that it's like your power play.
Yeah.
You know? So because they know something is up, and you're just not giving it to them.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, are you sure it's not you?
Yeah.
You know, just putting on them.
And it's it also puts off that, because we both do that actually, but there's this, once you know each other pretty well as we do, it's bullshit. You know, when like they say nothing, you're like, baby, come the fuck on.
Yeah. I know.
Just go ahead and get it out. You know, you're gonna get it out eventually.
It's happening for you guys because you started in radical honesty. For most couples who don't do that,
they don't pick up on it.
This it's a longer journey of because again, you don't have the tools to necessarily know how to communicate. You're constantly self-reflecting, and not in the most positive way.
Yeah.
In a self-critical, judgmental way.
Yeah.
And to what you said, that journey of realizing, to what you said, that it's not all about me was such a important thing for me to go through, and to really like start to reclaim my own power and to not take things on. Doesn't mean I'm avoidant and pull away, but I stand and I actually give him what he really wants, which is to challenge him lovingly and to break that gap between us and to come back into connection.
Maybe something you can talk about, I think, which was a really painful, difficult part for both of us, but I think especially you, is like I felt unsatisfied sexually, you know, and how we didn't know that we were different erotic blueprints.
Didn't know what we didn't know.
So how did that feel, and how did you navigate that part?
Yeah.
And what is erotic blueprint? I've never heard of that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So it's derived from The Erotic Mind by Jack Morin, and Jaya, who's an amazing, incredible practitioner and teacher and facilitator. She created the erotic blueprints off of this. Highly recommend it for anyone who's listening. It was a life-changing experience for us. Yeah. She's created courses around it. She's amazing. Highly recommend her as well. And that was such a challenging experience for us because we had such a soul connection, but we weren't necessarily like used to, I think, what we had previously experienced, which was like the trauma bond.
Yeah,
of
we didn't have like fireworks making love. It was just like sweet and amazing and felt like coming home, but it was lacking the cha-cha-cha.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And then when you're not getting that energy, you think that something is wrong. And then when you're getting it from someone else, which is what we were experiencing, right? Because you're getting that aliveness. And it was absolutely terrifying to experience. And it challenged me in all the ways that I needed. And I think that it started what I spoke about before, it started that journey towards realizing that I was completely cut off from this part of myself that I had that had caused me that I had caused a lot of destruction with, and therefore had caused me a lot of destruction. So this darker,
when you were younger,
when I was younger, like
irresponsible.
I was super irresponsible with my sexuality, and I was very manipulative and controlling, and caused a whole bunch of chaos. And so I cut myself off from this part. And then whenever we would have that reoccurring fight, it was so challenging because I was like, I know that you're right in a way, even though the way you're expressing it, even though the way you're expressing it isn't my favorite. I know that there's also something missing. And my story was, I can't touch this because this part of me is bad and wrong and destructive and chaotic. And so it was this journey of the whole experience of uncovering that we had different ways of expressing. And then our erotic blueprints, there's 5 different ones. There's sexual, sensual, energetic, kinky, and shapeshifter. So, and shapeshifters, all of them.
Oh, okay.
But a shapeshifter
can't put a finger on it.
Can't put a finger on it, but can be a little bit
aloof.
Aloof, exactly.
Sounds very Aquarian, actually.
Yeah.
Shapeshifter right here. And so we had the opposite experience, and just hearing that and her explanations are really amazing, and it takes you deeper into your core erotic themes and all of these different understandings that, again, I think as couples we deal with but don't actually deal with. You just swallow it, stuff it down into some part of your body, instead of talking about sex is so vulnerable.
Yeah,
It's
for sure.
so vulnerable. One of the most vulnerable things to be able to admit, I don't know what I'm doing.
And delivery in that department's got to be
Yeah.
paramount importance.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Absolutely.
You really suck at making love, man.
Yeah.
That's an F minus.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And then, so the blueprint, I guess, gives you a framework and
work
language to talk about it in, right?
Okay.
So what it does is she gives you you realize which ones you are, and then you realize how do you, so for example, I'm a kinky shapeshifter, and she's a sensual energetic. And so if I want the kinky
Such a great band name. I don't know why I was
exactly. It's like a playa name. Basically you find a way. So for me to get to a kinky place with Rachel, and we're also rediscovering what kink means. We're about to go to a kink workshop, a retreat in Cyprus. But
I'm so excited.
How you get there is through the sensual and an energetic. When the woman gets ignited in her way. So for her, if I meet her in that way, once she's ignited, then I can guide her towards this shapeshifty, kinky type of stuff, right? And then she can meet me there. But if I'm trying to
can't lead with that.
So our issue in the beginning was, neither of us felt fired up, like naturally. Like we would have sex, but we wouldn't be like, I need you right now, because our blueprints were different. And then how do I fire her up that she does want me, right? What are the ways that I can speak, or how can I set the music, or the lighting, or the this and the that she's like, ooh, right? And then once she's ignited, we can meet in the place that feels good to me and her, and then also, I believe what happens is your blueprints begin to shift.
And you can become adept at all of them.
Yes. And then you can embrace all of these different aspects, because for most of us, sexuality is just this like one thin kind of a area that we reside in, we feel confident in, and everything else is like, ooh, right? It's taboo, scary, maybe a little fucked up. I don't know about that. And then you realize, oh, wow, just like everything else, there's so much magic there. If you just approach it in a way that is spacious and curious. And
it sounds kind of like love languages in a way, but a little more focused on the sexual connection.
That's exactly what it is.
And our love languages are, by the way, exactly the same. So we've always like, that's
we get
amazing.
along so great. And then the sex thing, we were like, oh, and it took us years.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important to hear, because we have this really, illusion that if it's not there in the beginning, it can't happen.
Yeah.
And
it's so true.
And we've cultivated this this richness and this chemistry and polarity in our sexuality that is like so beyond what either of us could have ever imagined.
Right.
And I think that's again another thing.
That's getting towards the cosmic sexuality, right?
Exactly.
Like,
where you're like, open up a door and there's like 18 other universes.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
shit.
yeah,
Whoa.
And honestly, I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah.
When you get into it, you're like,
Whoa.
Yeah.
And a big thing. So in one of our retreats that we took last year, I think this is such an important piece especially for the men out there, but also for the women. Because oftentimes in our sexuality, Rachel felt rushed, right?
Yes.
In the erotic play process, or we call it foreplay process. For a man, usually it's like we know the rules. I'm going to go down on you, and then we're going to have sex, right? That's kind of like how it goes in most of the time. But for me, like if I'm going down on Rachel, there's a certain point where we can talk about everything in this podcast.
Yeah, of course.
At a certain point, and my cock is really hard, and I can feel that maybe it's starting to get maybe it won't be as hard in about a 2 minutes time.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So I better put it inside of her so I can start the motion so it stays hard.
Yeah.
And that's usually the part where she would feel rushed. And so what I didn't know up until literally this last year was that it's okay for your lingam, they call it in tantric terms, your cock, to go soft.
Yeah.
Ideally, actually.
We've
heard about this. Yeah.
And then for me, I was like mind blown. Wait a second. Because in my mind, the story that I had made up was if my dick goes soft, she's going to be like, oh, you're not attracted to me? Like, what's wrong? What's wrong, baby? Like,
it's a people pleasing thing.
And then I'd be like, no, I don't know what's wrong. I mean, And so like, there's so many things that we don't know until we know them. And so for me, it was so liberating to be like, oh, I can go down on you for an hour.
Yes.
You can go hard and soft and get soft and hard. And like, it doesn't mean anything.
That's so cool.
It's all kosher.
And I was literally like, wow, it took me like 47 years to realize this shit.
I had that, so like I didn't have that particular version. Like we could go down for a long time, but I always thought you needed to be like maximum hardness to deliver maximum pleasure.
Yeah, it's not.
Like, I don't know how I never unraveled that before, but then you're like, no, actually, like when it's a little softer, it's a little better. Sometimes, and it's like
it allows me to enjoy it for longer because like the harder it is, at least from my perspective, I'm like, oh, then keep it short because that is gonna hurt at some point.
Or it's also like how many layers you open up too,
exactly.
Right? Like the more layers you open up, the harder you can go. And So
and that's exactly this type of conversation. I think the thing as well is in the beginning for us as a man and a woman, we were so tightened. It's like, this is the way that I have sex. If you don't meet me here, you know, then having that conversation and being like, let's go on this journey together.
So
and
cool.
then it's amazing.
So cool. You nerd out about it too, because then you get the intellectual connection. I was going to ask too, as the emotionality, so you start doing these frameworks, you start making some tweaks. I assume the emotionality is opening up between you two, or are you becoming the emotional connections deepening? Like for what? We have one amazing sex life, but our emotionality keeps going deeper and it keeps getting better and better. We're always like, there's no way I can get better than that. And then as we get closer, it gets better. So was that?
It does.
Yeah.
Amen.
I think when it comes to that, speaking about phases and parts of yourself, every time you emotionally open about a part of yourself, and you have sex afterwards, like then you're having for the first time sex with that face of yours, right? So finally that face got kissed, like that sad face never received the kiss before because you were hiding it. This face you showed now, and this is the face that's being kissed now. So that is like you're allowing. That's why it gets deeper and deeper because you're making love to every layer of you.
That is, and that's such a beautiful way of expressing it, because that I really believe that is the key to long-lasting, sustainable passion in relationship. Because when you go on this journey, you don't realize that it is mirroring your sexuality, right? And so the deeper, the kinkier, the more expansive, all these realms actually come from so much of us that's unexpressed, right? Those parts of us that have felt judged and shamed and betrayed and abandoned and rejected. And they actually hold all of this life force from all of these lifetimes that we've kept it hidden.
Yeah.
And then when you bring them forward in a safe container, it's like
you're getting love on it, basically.
Oh my goodness.
It's like the visual I'm having is like this intertwining of all these different strands of ourselves, intellectual, emotional, physical, spiritual. And yeah, the more strands you can bring to bear, the stronger that rope becomes. Yeah. And it's amazing.
And again, once again, guys, like for those of you that are desiring to go deep and discover these universes upon universes, we believe the only way to get there, because there's information out there in the world on podcasts and telling you like, keep some secrets, keep some mystery, and it's like you're playing surface games if you're there, and it's because it's easy to keep secrets. It's way harder to be vulnerable, to be
open.
It's terrible. And you cannot enter these portals of experience until you've done this work. And another thing that I would say that's the utmost of importance, because even in the tantric realms that we're so grateful that we put our student hats on, and we're constantly learning and constantly growing. And even then we're finding that this layer of, for us, what feels like it should be basic education and communication is missing. They throw you in the deep end as teachers, and they're like, oh, you figure it out. But a lot of people stop there at the first experience because they're like, they brought up so much darkness, so much of my trauma, and I don't know how to talk about it. I don't know how to say to you in a conscious way what is bringing up. So I'm just going to stuff it down, right? So it's so important to learn these tools, because they will be there for you in your darkest hours. We're all going to get there at some point. And then you feel held, and you feel supported, and you feel like you can actually speak about all the faces, all the parts, express it in a way that's not going to drive your partner away. That's going to create connection between you guys.
Two brilliant points. On the first one, that's saying that you can only meet people as deeply as you've met yourself. Right? Like that's what you're saying. In these relationships, you could keep the secrets and play the games and be the fiat fuckboy. Like a lot of young men have done it, probably many.
Yeah.
But it's not going to get you the fulfillment that you think you want, or that what I thought I wanted from that path. It is the opposite when you get there. But the depth, right, where you are, again, being vulnerable, pursuing radical truth, doing these exercises, like that's how you establish that thing that you are actually looking for. And I'm sorry, what was your second point? I had something to say about that too. But, just the gradualism, right? You can't just jump in the deep end with this stuff. No. It is. I'm really grateful we started building this from literally day one. Again, thanks to you guys. Like we was like, here's this foundation, and she came right on board. Initially, she thought I was full of shit. Like the first 24 hours, she's like, who is this guy? What's the story you always tell about me? I was eating lamb.
Oh wow. So we met briefly, and he was having dinner with his friends. So we were like, we'll meet in a bit. Finish you guys your dinner, and I'll come later on. So I already had said my name, but then disappeared. And then later on came back. And when I come back, at the moment as I sit down, instead of him saying like, welcome back or anything at all, it was very dark. Anyway, he was like, can you check my teeth? And I looked at him. I was like, this is so weird. I'm gonna remember it forever. If one day we get married, I'm gonna tell him to remind him of this.
I don't know what mode I was in, but it was like this: just be yourself completely. And at the time, I felt like I had lamb on my teeth, so I was like, "Oh, do I have anything on my teeth?" She was just like, "What the fuck?"
So refreshing.
so refreshing. So different.
Yeah. And then it just proceeded to open up about everything in my life that was going on, good, bad, and ugly. And then she, reciprocated basically. The next, after you realize I wasn't full of shit, and after about a day, then she starts to open up, and it's just set a wonderful tone for us.
Yeah, I was open definitely for the idea, because before in my life I had I didn't show all my faces. There were just a package. One was there, wrapped up, buried. I was like, this is only for me, not for anybody's ears. And that was my life. That was I've tried that and never succeeded. At some point, I was like, I think I'm gonna stay single forever. So when Robert was introducing that, I was like, this is refreshing. This sounds fun. Let's do this.
Yeah. Another thing that I wanted to speak to, which was it's so huge to understand, was whenever you take on these new realms, some folks, again, if we talk about like martial arts analogy here, you want to go to martial arts class and do black belt stuff right away, right? It's so good, and this comes from Katie and Gay Hendricks. When you expand, learn to rest in that place. Allow your nervous system to get used to this new closeness and intimacy, maybe the new intensity, instead of just like expand, let's just go all the way, right? So when you learn to rest in it, it becomes your normal. And then you expand again and you learn to rest in it. And same with like, people ask us about like, how do you, after 12 years and you play around, you do this and that. And this is the Rachel Pringle method which is essentially the same as baby stepping. If whenever you're going into a realm that is like a little bit like, I don't
Step
know.
slow.
Baby step. See
Take
what
your
that feels
time.
like. Put your toe in. Be like, okay, it's just a toe. Like, okay, but I didn't die, And then, but maybe like, ooh, I don't like it, But then you just put the toe in. So it's like, it's so valuable to learn how to approach, especially areas that seem really, really scary. And for each of us, it's something different,
For sure.
And then, because sometimes your partner really wants something. And you're like, hell no. That's just a hardcore no. But what if you just could go like an inch in that direction? That alone would open up your own mind and give your partner this feeling like, oh, you love me, you care about me. And then you put the toe in and be like, ooh, this is really nice. Why did we not put the toe in before? So there's all these ways that you can spice up your life and bring novelty into your relationship is what we all crave. Learn together, right? Grow and expand together. Life is infinitely delicious and interesting.
Embrace the dynamism, right?
Yes.
Some of these static, yes, no, this is me, this is not me. And it's so true. One of my highest health priorities is keeping my brain in top shape. To take care of my brain power, I do many things, such as striving to read, write, exercise, and meditate daily. One of the latest tools in my brain power toolkit is MindLab Pro. MindLab Pro is a nootropic supplement that is scientifically proven to enhance your brain power. When I take MindLab Pro, my mind feels like it has a better grip on the world, my thinking is more lucid, and the articulation of my speech is radically improved. MindLab Pro has been tested in rigorous, double-blind, placebo-controlled human trials and has been proven to enhance brain power for users in every age group. MindLab Pro is an advanced formulation of 11 nootropic ingredients and is backed by research from over 1,400 human trials conducted over the past 32 years. So if you're looking to enhance your brain power, MindLab Pro is an excellent solution. Go to mindlabpro.com/breedlove to start enhancing your brain power today. Again, that's mindlabpro.com/breedlove. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably get it. You get that Bitcoin upends everything that state-sponsored schools teach us about money. For those who get the importance of Bitcoin, it is important that we have a smart way to buy and hold Bitcoin. My friends at Coinbits, the oldest Bitcoin-only exchange in the United States, have pioneered the concept of roundups, which converts your spare change into Bitcoin. Simply connect your credit or debit cards, and your usual purchases are rounded up to the nearest dollar, letting you stack sats on every purchase without even thinking about it. Coinbits also provides a terrific self-custody experience. Connect a hardware wallet for automatic withdrawals into cold storage to minimize your risk and stay sovereign over your Bitcoin. My favorite Coinbits feature is Coinbits Plus, which gives you the best exchange rate on Bitcoin. It even gives you real-time feedback on how well you are doing on your savings plan. With Coinbits Plus, power users can save more money to buy even more Bitcoin. All that, plus peer-to-peer cash and Bitcoin payments, target orders, price alerts, and more means Coinbits can help you do almost anything you need to do with Bitcoin. So go to coinbits.app/breedlove to sign up today. Again, that is coinbits, BITS.app/breedlove. It reminded me of exposure therapy actually in psychology. Like if someone's scared of elevators, you know, they're like, well, can you just go in the hallway and look at the elevator?
Yeah,
It's like, okay, can you take a step towards it? Can you touch the elevator? And then eventually they're riding the elevator, you know? So, you guys have to go here in about 7-ish minutes.
We can go till 4.
Oh, you want to go till 4?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have a little bit of extension. Well, in that case, I was going to ask for like some words of wisdom, but now that we have a little more time,
Whatever
maybe
you
do you have? We philosophize about our relationship all the time. We talk about all these millions of different things, and I wonder this and I wonder that. So I wonder if there's anything on your mind or heart.
I think of a very easy one for everybody to take, probably very relevant, especially in our modern life, to allow inequality in a relationship. As in, like, there are so many times that we get upset with our partner because they can't do the same thing as you do it. For instance, I can wash the dishes and I get upset because you can't wash the dishes. I was like, how can you not just learn to wash this dish? It's so simple, right?
You never let me.
Right? It's so simple. You can learn it. Like, it's not rocket science, right? But to love the idea that you can't do it, because we just faced a situation actually a couple of days ago. We went to stay in a place, our friend's place, and the gate wasn't opening. I was so glad that I don't know how to open gates because it was raining and it was cold outside. It was midnight.
In the middle of nowhere, Texas.
I love that moment of inequality, of sitting in
Coyotes
the car
howling,
in the heat.
You got this.
I'm out there
And my
loving it, by the
husband
way.
is
I'm
out in the cold, in the rain, trying to figure out a gate and call people, how to get in somewhere in a farmland. So there is no light outside. It's super dark. And I was wearing my coat and sitting inside. I was like, I love inequality. I think so. Whenever you're facing a friction moment with your partner, like, why can't you just move this over there? Or, I'm glad that they don't know how to do this, so I will do it. So they can do the things that I can't, or don't know how to do. So they can compliment me in other places, because I would be terrible at opening that gate, and I would have probably not figured it out as soon as you did. So we would have been in a worse place if we were equal, let's say. So let me do those things that I'm good at, and those things, and let you do the things that you're good at.
You are so wonderful about that. Like, you don't even let me do things in the kitchen, and I was trying to help cook or clean or whatever. It's like doesn't even. And then that's actually liberating for me, Matt, because I actually don't. I mean, I can do it. I can wash dishes, sort of. I'm better off doing something else. But it's so funny. We're at the retreat at one point. This is silly, but we had our little argument one day, and I was like going into my hyper independent mode. Like, I don't need this shit. I don't need anyone. And so like I went and I did my own laundry. Like, that's how I got back her. Like, she always does my laundry. I was like, I'm just gonna do my own laundry, and just like.
How'd that work out for you?
She's like, baby, where are your dirty clothes? I was like, I did my own laundry. She's like, oh,
okay. Oh shit, he's real mad. Big mad.
One of the things that we do, and is part of our ethos, and I would say like our religion, if you will, is to give constant gratitude to your partner. Acknowledge.
Yeah.
Like, I'm the guy, I'm the sous chef in the house. And I do the dishes. I'm really great at dishes. Also, my mother-in-law just loves me.
Indeed.
And so, but what the beauty about it all is, like, even if we are doing the thing that one of us is better at, right? I always thank her multiple times for making dinner, and I say how good it is, right? She's always like, baby, thank you so much for putting the dishes away and doing the dishes. So when you feel acknowledged, right, then that's all we really need is that acknowledgement, that appreciation that you see, hey, you're doing the thing that you're in your genius or you're good at. I could do it too, but I'm so grateful that you are doing it. And that's like the magic element. And it's interesting because we, again, like in our couples work, with some cultures and some couples, they have such a hard time saying to their partner even just 3 things that they can be grateful for, because it's so counterculture to them somehow,
right?
You know, and it's so wild because when we do gratitude walks every single day, where we, you know, sometimes for an hour one person is just going,
Wow.
and it's a
On
whole
gratitude.
ritual, it's a whole practice,
Yeah.
and and we're at the same time we're like
amazing.
manifesting our future, doing future gratitude, all these things. And again, you can do this while you're driving your car. You can do this together. You can do this separately, but it's a non-negotiable for us.
Yeah.
We did it on the way over here as we were driving about this podcast, and it's going exactly how we imagined it would be going. And so, gratitude is such a superpower. We have a 5-to-1 negativity bias. Every single one of us as human beings. Where's the danger? Where is the tiger? You know, and we have to reverse it
For sure. Yeah.
And so to these things that, you know, it's when you appreciate your partner, the love just continues to grow and to flow.
Yeah.
And you feel like, oh, yes. Of course I'll do the dishes. Of course I'll do the laundry. I love doing the laundry.
Because we love to serve, and then to see one another, to be seen in service.
Yes.
Like, well, I'm doing it because I love you, and the fact that you see it and acknowledge it and appreciate it amplifies it. And it's so funny that, like, she often thanks me for eating her food. She's like a brilliant culinary genius. You know, everything she makes looks amazing, tastes amazing. It's always funny when she's thanking me for eating her delicious food. I'm like, any human on earth would eat this delicious food, but you're welcome. I'm happy to do it. Like, no problem, baby.
Yeah, we do that definitely very much, because we started in our relationship with the radical truth. And I was like, I don't believe in any relationship that's 50-50. That just doesn't work. Not in the household, not in the finances. You're going to be complementary. I'm going to suck. I'm going to be terrible at certain things that I'm looking for that person that does that for me. And I'm going to be good at certain things and you can suck at it.
Exactly.
Completely
It's very practical in a way, but also, I mean, obviously, like, economic, and it's a division of labor, but it's also what we are, right? Like, men are better at certain things, and
and I think there's to what you said as well, is like, when we can get away from what, like, genderizing those roles too, and actually just realize, because that was a moment for us in the way that we work, like, that I take on a particular role that maybe in a more traditional sense the man would take on.
Of course.
And there was a period of time where I was trying to get him to take on this type of role.
Yes.
And I'm just way fucking better at it.
She is so much better at being a handyman than me, actually. Like, she DIYs everything in the house, and, like, it's a skill I don't have. So like, I'm totally supported, and I can, like, be the sidekick, but I'm like, she's leading the charge.
And just to be like, to say those would be radically truth, right? So and there were, like, in that moment of, like, I'm the handyman over here, and he's the big tall guy, not even drilling a thing in the wall. And then I was like, oh, thank God for that, because I get this freedom to decorate the house as I wish.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Like, now I saw it, instead of like, no, you should be drilling too. I'm like, no, thank God. So I could do it.
Until the drill's really heavy, then she assigns me
I asked you for
hammer
that.
Right here.
Literally, it was like, this is the dot.
Yes.
Yeah, it's so liberating when and for us, you know, it was around organization and how we do our finances and how we do all the things. And when we aligned ourselves in all the ways and took away the stories about how it should be because of society told us or culture told us. And we're like, wait, you're in your genius here. I'm in my genius here. And we just started operating from that place.
Oh my God, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Everything just expands. Everything is, you're like, it's so easy.
Yes.
Everything is so easy all the time. Like, this is amazing. You
I love
know?
how you use the word genius. Like, when you're in your genius, she's in her genius. That word's related to the word genie.
Yeah.
So, like, all your wishes come true.
Absolutely.
Right?
Oh, wow.
We literally get, like, all this studio. Like, I don't have any of this skill. She did all this, right? I can just sit here and talk, basically. And like all these other areas of our life where your genius shines, we like lean into that. And then it frees me up to do, like, I'm very responsible and I take care of the money and all the law and all this stuff. And so we're like, it just makes you more complimentary, basically.
Absolutely. And then you're moving as a team.
And
you excel much, much faster.
Yes.
Because that's how I cook all the time. And if Robert enters the kitchen, he might get a warning.
Just going to slow it down and make it taste worse, basically.
Take a few steps back, get away from my knife.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's my territory, and it gives me so much freedom to excel in it because I've become such a better cook. I've been trying to cook and do all these recipes. Robert loves to eat and loves to experiment. So I was a good cook. I became a much better cook because of the freedom that
You're welcome.
give to myself by not allowing. And there are so many times, and the other side that gives Robert so much freedom to do those things that he's really good at and can excel in much more. And so as I'm excelling, he's excelling. And that's like, I'll be cooking. Can you go and do some writing? Right? Instead.
And this is so again, back to radical truth. It's like, this is the truth of how humans both benefit through cooperation. And the more truthful you can get with yourself, the more truthful you can get in these sacred pauses and practices and daily rituals that you're doing, the more you unlock human potential, basically, in your heart, in your mind, in your productivity.
And I think that 50-50 relationship, as in like, oh, you should be doing the laundry too, or you should be doing the dishes too, that kind of puts you and your partner more in a competitive space rather than celebrating each other's feature. And then you start to slow, but I do the dishes better than you do them, right? You don't do it as good. No, you know what? You're out of this equation. So we're not even comparing you in that field to me. And I think that is also sometimes in careers between couples that they start to compare their successes or their pay or everything because they constantly compare each other to each other in everyday activities. So we just need to
rip that. You're still, when you're in that dynamic, you're still operating. We talked about this in the beginning. Is like as individuals. You're still like you're not the same team, right? You're in a way like opposing teams that are working like together. Right. When you become the same team, that's when the real magic happens because there's no more of that inner conflict going on. Who's doing more of this and that, and then it just, like you said, the potential accelerates in such a way that we're constantly blown away. You know, every day one of our practices is we call in the divine. And I believe that the divine energy, which is, you know, we have so many names for it, divine, God, goddess, you know, universe, life force, chi, shakti, whatever we want to call this, divine intelligence. But when you take away that sort of energy, she can just flow through you and create. And when you speak in your prayer into being with gratitude, and we see this constantly, like we're on these walks and we're like, you know, we're sitting on a stage and we look at each other and we have a moment and we're, you know, giving our gift. And the next thing you know, we're in that moment in real life, looking at each other like, didn't we just fucking speak this into being, and here we are. And it like, there was no efforting in it. It literally, the divine is like, shh.
It's incredible.
And because you take yourself out of the way, because you're not like doing this thing. You're just allowing that force to flow through.
And what a perfection of freedom, right? That you can actually chart your path through life in a way that's otherwise unattainable. We read a book by that title, actually, The Perfection of Freedom. And it described how
great title.
Marriage, I don't want to spoil the ending. It's a very long, dense philosophical book. It's not fiction, so I'm not really spoiling the ending. But marriage was said to be the perfection of freedom, ultimately. That two individuals coming together as one in one sacred individual, basically, and unlocking all of this complementarity that you're describing. And then if you manifest together, take it to the next level, you can start to create this life path that was otherwise unobtainable or unfindable. And so, I mean, in traditional words, we're describing the benefits of real marriage, right? Really a sacred marriage and doing the work to, I don't know, what do we call this? Just going deep into the masculine and the feminine dynamics.
Yeah, and I know, well, like marriage is like what we said, like excluding all your other options. And
that's the paradox, right?
Because
it's freedom,
we have
but you've excluded all your options.
And it's fine. And because what is, if it's not marriage, so what are you then? Then you're meeting different people. And each of those people deals with parts of you, but not all of you. So all of you never feels fully loved by someone or lovable by someone. It's like when you exclude everyone else. So the only love that you kind of like romantic love that you can receive is from one person. And that's why when you get in that depth of the relationship, it's like, well, you give them these faces of you, like your funny face, your quirky face, your this, but not the rest. Those were like shared probably in the past with other people, not your dark side, not like your this side. And then finally this person like sees the rest of you and gets to love that. So that's why it is the perfection in my eyes, because I finally feel loved by a human. That's what you,
which
well,
brings
we
on
try
a whole other slew of gifts because you're unlocked by love.
Yes.
Because I think most of our conflicts come because we don't feel loved.
Yeah.
I think because everyone wants to feel loved.
Absolutely.
And if we're ever in conflict, it's because parts of us don't feel loved.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a beautiful, beautiful vignette. And the other side of that trade is the same thing, right? Like when you're dating 3 other people, well, they're each dating 3 other people, more or less. And then you're like picking up all this.
Man.
Exactly. All this complexity and entropy is coming in. And just like, so you're dealing with each other on a shallow level and a highly entropic complex. And it's like, it's just not, that is not where the freedom is, guys. Like to talk to my 20-year-old self, I think that's the talk I would have with them. Like, this is not freedom. This is like the opposite of freedom. You need to actually go deep, not broad.
In Tantra, the masters say that you can practice Tantra by yourself, you know, and Tantra meaning like all aspects of this meditation, breath work, and all these things. But when you are practicing Tantra with a partner, it is the lightning way, the fastest way to liberation, to remembering that you are divine. And it's through the couple, you know, and certainly from personal experience, having meditated for years and done all these practices. And I also picked up on something that you said earlier, which was I certainly utilized these tools of meditation and spiritual practice as a way to not feel my feelings, to intellectualize and be like, well, in the Vedas, it says that feelings are stupid, basically, you know? So therefore, I'm not going to feel. I had this whole concept of being a human was a mistake. I was like, I'm not even supposed to be here, you know? And that's why like suicidal tendencies and all of this was played perfectly into it.
Wow.
But then now, like being in this depth of connection and love and the type of love that you were just describing, I'm like, oh, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. There's literally no other place. I am the creatrix, experiencing myself in this way and like celebrating this creation, you know? And even if, and this is where for me and what we teach is like, everything about is in life is like, what is the story that I choose to believe? You know, even if that wasn't the truth, right? If it was something else, why not choose to believe the most empowering story?
Of course.
The story that gives you life, that gives you purpose, that gives you that feeling of gratitude and joy, that every cell in your body lights up. When they put, you know, they test you for stuff, they're like, great. Why not choose that versus like, this is all sucks, this is miserable, it's a mistake, like, meh, you know?
You have to have an attitude.
Yeah.
Why would you not take the attitude that's lighting you up and giving you real tangible benefits? It's so true.
Attitude of gratitude.
Attitude of gratitude. And well, talking about gratitude earlier, but it is the highest frequency, I think.
Absolutely.
Like you can feel, I don't know, any situation when I'm capable of doing it. It's most difficult to do it when you're suffering or something's bad. But if you can get to that place of gratitude, much easier to do when things are going well. It literally amplifies. I feel it in my physical body.
Absolutely.
And I don't know, extending that then between the couple, and it's like one of those self-amplifying things. And
and again, it's the gratitude is a feeling. You know?
Yeah, it's not a concept.
You can do this. You can do a gratitude prayer. I'm so grateful for that. Life is so great. I'm so grateful that you know. But you're not connected to your feelings when you are. I'm so grateful that life is so amazing. I'm so grateful that today is the best day. And then as your body's like, let's go.
Exactly.
Again, which is like, this is the 95%, and this is the part that we got to convince. Not here.
Right.
It's this. You know, and the body's always in the moment. The body's the gateway to the present moment.
Yes.
And in a lot of the traditions, it's like the mind is. No. This is the Maya.
Body. That's right.
This is here now.
Right.
You know, and
as you said earlier, right? The present's the only reality, and
Yeah.
it's the mind that's living in the future, the past.
Yeah.
Right? It's running simulations of the future, or memories of the past,
Yeah.
but it's the body that is here and now.
Yeah.
Guys, this has been amazing.
Yeah.
I thought it would also be amazing, but it's been even better than I thought. So
Yeah.
thank you for doing this.
Thank
There's just 2 minutes left now. Any closing thoughts where people can find you and your work, like your courses, extra wisdom to send people home with?
So we have a course starting actually called Co-Devotion, which speaks to basically all of the things we just spoke about. So
deep dive.
Yeah, it's a 4-week course, 5-week course.
It's a month-long immersion, and there's 6 sessions. So
Yeah.
it's a beautiful immersive experience.
So highly,
and it's for couples
recommend it.
and for singles. So it's teaching and about the language of love. And and it includes deep shadow work and getting into our darkness and learning how to summon and contain and polarity and chemistry and all the delicious things.
Wow.
Yeah. And then we also, you can find Pirma Breath on YouTube for free. I have channels of Blurbe. So if you just come to Instagram at Urb Johann and Positive Pringle, you'll find all the links there, and come practice with us, guys. It's we love, being on the mountaintop, but together.
Yeah,
like,
together, absolutely.
Not, our way of teaching is not like we're your guru. Like, we want to activate your guru.
Yes.
We want to remind you that you are guru, and it's better together, guys. And when we're together, it gets better and better forever and ever.
Amazing.
So come find us, come play with us, come practice with us. And we're just so grateful that you guys had us for this episode.
Honored, truly honored. Yes,
Magic
it's amazing.
together.
Yes, and we're going to link to all that in the show notes. And Johann, Rachel, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Honestly, this is great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, click here to find more just like it, and here to find our most recent episode. Also, make sure to like this video to help shine light on the corruption of money. And be sure to subscribe to this channel to stay connected.